We were on the ground, and McNamara was going out into a foggy day, and I was behind him.
You asked whether I was optimistic or pessimistic. Today I can tell you that military progress in the past 12 months has exceeded our expectations.
He was saying, gentlemen, I'm very encouraged by what I've seen in Vietnam. In every respect, things are better now. We're making progress. Everything is better. And I was thinking, I hope I'm never in a job where I have to lie like that. I learned that McNamara's grave doubts about the war continued to deepen. Behind closed doors, he recommended pulling back on the bombing and pushed for a political settlement. Johnson rejected McNamara's advice.
McNamara had a sense then, very much like people have now, that this was a tragic blunder, that we were in the middle of a catastrophe, and that it was important to try to understand how we had gotten into that catastrophe.
In June of 1967, McNamara ordered a comprehensive study within the Pentagon on the history of U.S. involvement in Vietnam.
We went to the Rand Corporation and recruited the people there who did historical studies. And then, of course, one of the people we asked was Daniel Ellsberg.
My involvement in the study would change my life and change history in ways I couldn't have imagined.
We classified the Pentagon Papers study as top secret, and every page of every study as top secret, because we considered the existence of the study to be top secret. But the person we were trying to keep it from was not the Vietnamese, who would not have cared at all, or the Russians or the Chinese, but Lyndon Johnson. We feared through the whole study that if the president found out about it, that he would stop it, because Johnson knew that McNamara had doubts about the war and believed that there were a band of civilians in the Pentagon determined to do everything they could to get us out of Vietnam.
I don't want a man in here to go back home thinking otherwise. We are going to win.
But Johnson's optimism was about to shatter. On Vietnam's New Year, 1968, a massive surprise attack caught U.S. troops completely off guard. For the first time, the war reached into Vietnam's cities and towns, including Saigon. The Tet Offensive was a devastating blow to U.S. morale, and the American public began to lose faith in the war.
With a bold series of raids during the last 3 days, the enemy in Vietnam has demolished the myth that Allied military strength controls that country. The communists hit the very heart of Saigon, the capital.
When Johnson's top general asked for more troops, the request was leaked to the New York Times. The story caused a tremendous uproar in Congress.
I would feel that our people were badly misguided and did not understand the consequences of such a disaster.
Well, we agree on one thing, that they can be badly misguided, and you and the president, in my judgment, have been misguiding them for a long time in this war.
I realize now that my previous attitude had been simply mistaken, that I wasn't discharging my responsibilities to the country, to the Constitution, to the public, or to the troops, by keeping those secrets which had led to the escalation of the war, that had been wrong. But the question was, what would make a difference? I met with reporter Neil Sheehan at the New York Times and leaked information about a secret CIA report on enemy troop strength. The story made the front page. It was the first time I had gone outside official channels to affect the conduct of the war. Till I was about 15.
And how serious were you at the time?
Well, I spent all my time playing then for 10 years and then didn't play for another 40.
What happened?
My mother died, and she was the one who wanted me to be a concert pianist. On July 4th, 1946, We were traveling to Denver, going through the cornfields of Iowa. Very hot day in the middle of the day. My father fell asleep at the wheel, and the car went off the road into a culvert, a little wall rising by the side of the road, and sheared off the side of the car where my mother and sister were sitting, and killed my mother and sister. I was on the other side behind the driver, so I got a concussion and a broken knee, and I was in a coma for 36 hours, and then in the hospital for about 3.5 months. So I think it did probably leave the impression on me that someone you loved, like my father, or respected an authority, could fall asleep at the wheel and had to be watched, not because they were bad, but because they were inattentive, perhaps, to the risks. "11 months earlier, when I was 14, Hiroshima had been destroyed and Nagasaki. I was very concerned about this turn of human events. I thought it was very ominous. What I saw as a moral, extremely questionable act by our president, whom I admired, Harry Truman. It got confounded in my mind with my father's failure to stay alert and allowing the car to kill my mother and sister.
I shall not seek, and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
Never has so much power been used so ineffectively as in Vietnam.
Support for the war was plummeting after Tet, and Johnson withdrew from the 1968 presidential race.
I pledge to you, we shall have an honorable end to the war in Vietnam.
Richard Nixon won the election, promising peace with honor. The public had been led to believe that he had a secret plan to end the war. Henry Kissinger was then talking about the need to get out of Vietnam with a decent interval. Now, that was quite a radical point of view for an establishment person at that time, to say we should be out, and all we ask is that they not embarrass us by taking it over immediately. That led, in me, but in nearly everybody, to the false impression that presumably Nixon agreed with it. Nixon didn't agree with that for a minute. I had given a set of options to Kissinger. I drafted at RAND 6 or 7 alternative approaches in Vietnam to consider at his first National Security Council meeting with Nixon. And he at one point said, "Dan, you don't have a win option." And I said, "Well, I don't think there is a win option." I said, "You could double the number of troops and that would keep things quieter, but until they left. You could use nuclear weapons and kill all the people. I wouldn't call that a win. So there just, as far as I see, is no way to win." I took that opportunity to tell him something that I'd long thought of telling somebody who was about to enter the world of really high secrecy. And I said, "Henry, you're about to get a lot of clearances higher than top secret that you did not know existed. That's going to have a sequence of effects on you. First, a great exhilaration that you're getting all this amazing information that you didn't know even existed. And the next phase is you'll feel like a fool for not having known of any of this. But that won't last long. Very soon, you'll come to think that everyone else is foolish. What would this expert be telling me if he knew what I knew?" So in the end, you stop listening to them.
I think everybody thought that Nixon had been elected to end the war and was going to end the war, and it became very clear to me that he was not.
Mort Halpern was working for Kissinger in the White House. In the late summer of '69, Mort told me he's staying in and he's threatening escalation.
For once, we've got to use the maximum power of this country against this shit-ass little country. the war.